In the Belarusian swamps, where the fog chokes out both sound and landmarks, Soviet tankers inside a Lend-Lease Sherman hear the approach of a German armada. Hearts beat in unison with the enemy tracks, and horror flares inside the crew. The loader drops a shell, screaming about suicide, and tries to turn the tank back. The commander suppresses the mutiny with a brutal blow, turning fear into rage. The gruesome details, fire licking at the armor, men writhing in the smoke, are just a curtain. An intriguing fact, they got so close they could see the cigarette in the German officer's teeth. What is hiding behind this maneuver of desperation? Watch the video. There lies the brutal truth about the price paid to stop the breakthrough. June 1944. Belarusian Soviet Socialist Republic. Operation Bagration. The swamp isn't just terrain here. It is an aggressive environment trying to digest 30 tons of American steel. A heavy, oily fog hangs in the air. Milk. Visibility is 0.0. Sounds, landmarks, and common sense drown in this whitish jelly. It smells of rotting duckweed, stagnant water, and the sharp chemical reek of American fuel. That smell is unmistakable. Foreign machinery. A foreign war on native soil. The Sherman M4A2 stands on a shaky corduroy road, its chevron tracks biting into the slick, slimy logs. The engine idles. A monotonous vibration travels through the steel floor into the soles of their boots, rises higher, trembles in their knees, and gets stuck in their spines. For the crew, this hum is the only confirmation that they are still alive. If the motor dies here, in this quagmire, the MCHA will turn from a combat unit into a mass grave before the first shot is fired. The tank commander, Guards Lieutenant Viktor Gromov, presses his face into the periscope brow pad. The rubber is damp, sticky with condensation. Before his eyes, there is only a murky veil. The vision block is useless.
Sticking your head out of the hatch means exposing it to stray shrapnel or a sniper bullet that could fly out of this milk at any second. Gromov feels a cold drop roll down his back under his sweat-soaked tunic. It isn't the heat. It is the physiology of fear, processed by the body into cold concentration. 1, this is 3. Come in. Gromov's voice sounds hollow and mechanical in the throat microphone. In the headphones, there is only the crackle of static. The airwaves are dead. The SCR 506 radio is an excellent, powerful American station, but right now it is catching only the white noise of the atmosphere and interference from storm fronts somewhere to the west. They are cut off. Total isolation. The battalion has gone ahead, or burned out, or took a wrong turn at a fork that wasn't on the map. Topography here is a third party to the conflict, and it is playing against everyone.
Dead air, Comrade Commander? The voice of the loader, Sergeant Erokin, breaks into a falsetto. Belay the panic! Gromov doesn't raise his voice. He simply states a fact. Listen to the horizon. Inside the turret, it is cramped. The Americans are proud of the ergonomics, the leather seats, the interior lining that prevents armor spalling from shredding the crew upon impact. But when you are locked in a steel box in the middle of a hostile void, this comfort feels like a mockery. Lend-Lease, a beautiful machine, tall, too tall. The Sherman's profile towers over the swamp like a lighthouse. For German gunners, this silhouette is a gift. Flat, vertical sides. No rational slope angles like on the T-34. Right angles are shell traps. 75 millimeters of frontal armor sounds okay on paper. In reality, against the German Zoo, it is just cardboard. Gromov knows the technical specs of his machine by heart. He knows that this tank is a collection of compromises. The gasoline engine under the rear deck is a fire risk raised to an absolute. One lucky hit to the engine compartment, and the high-octane American gas will turn the crew into torches in 3 seconds. They are sitting on a powder keg, and the match has already been lit. The driver, Sergeant Major Kolyada, a former tractor driver from near Ryazan, grips the control levers so hard his knuckles are white. His hands, black with grease and ingrained dirt, are trembling. Not from fear of the enemy, but from tension. Keeping a 30-ton behemoth on slick logs is work for a circus tightrope walker, not a tanker. One wrong move with a lever, one jerk of the clutch, and the track will slip into the bog. The tank will settle on its belly, and then that's it. The end. The swamp will suck them down slowly, with a slurping sound, leaving not even an oil slick on the surface. "Kolyada, don't drop the RPMs," commands Gromov. "Keep it taut." "Holding, Commander."
"She's heating up, the bastard. Water in the radiator is boiling," wheezes the driver. Inside the fighting compartment, the air is heavy. A mixture of burnt gunpowder from past firing, heated metal, human sweat, and the synthetic smell of American insulation. The fan can barely keep up. The air is thick. You could cut it with a knife. Every movement is a struggle. Fatigue accumulates in the muscles like lactic acid. They haven't slept for 2 days. Their eyes are filled with the grit of sleep deprivation. Eyelids are heavy, as if made of lead. But they cannot sleep. Sleep here equals death. Gromov looks at the breech of the 75mm M3 gun. A good gun. Fast. Accurate. The gyroscopic stabilizer allows for firing on the move, a miracle of technology unavailable to Soviet tanks. But the caliber? 75mm. Against infantry, it's a meat grinder. Against light armor, a hammer. But if the forehead of a tiger or a panther swims out of the fog, this gun turns into a useless pipe. An armor-piercing shell will simply crumble into dust against Krupp steel. It is physics, not enough kinetic energy. To punch through a German cat, you have to get in point blank, at a distance where it is impossible to miss, but also impossible to survive. The silence outside presses on the ears harder than the roar of battle. In battle, there is dynamics, there is action. Here, there is only waiting and the unknown. The fog steals distance. It seems like the muzzle brake of the cannon is resting against a white wall. The world has shrunk to the size of the turret. The outside world does not exist. There is only the crew, 4 men bound by headsets and a common fate, and a mechanism that lives its own life. You can hear the bolt clack as the loader checks for the 10th time that there is a shell in the chamber. It's nervous. A tick. "Erokin, stop jerking the bolt," barks Gromov. "You'll wear out the mechanism." "Yes, stopped," the loader snaps back, but removes his hands. Sound. Gromov freezes. Through the steady hum of his own engine, through the cotton wool of the fog, something alien breaks through. A low, guttural rumble. It differs from the ringing, strained sound of American motors. This is a heavy bass sound. Dull, rolling, like distant thunder. The ground under the tracks begins to vibrate barely noticeably in a different rhythm. This is not vibration from their own engine. This is resonance from something very heavy moving over the peat bog. Gromov looks at his watch. The hands have frozen. Time has stretched out, turned into a viscous substance. Seconds drip like oil from a punctured crankcase. The sound grows. It is coming from the east, or from the west? In the fog, acoustics are deceptive. Sound reflects off the water, off the trees, confuses, leads you by the nose. But instinct, honed by years of war, screams in his ear. Danger. "Crew, attention!" Gromov's voice becomes hard as sandpaper. Observation sector, 360. Listen. Listen until your ears ring. They are alone. There will be no help. Aviation doesn't fly in this weather. Artillery is blind. If the enemy comes out of the fog, it will be a duel in a phone booth. Only instead of knives, armor-piercing slugs, and instead of a booth, a swamp from which there is no exit. Gromov feels his stomach tighten, not from fear of death, but from fear of screwing up, from fear of not being fast enough, from fear that his decision, made a second ago, is already wrong. The Lend-Lease import shudders, as if sensing the approach of a predator. In this fog, on this cursed corduroy road, the boundaries between man and machine are erased. The Sherman right now is not iron. It is an extension of the crew's nervous system. And this nervous system is stretched to the limit, ready to snap at the slightest touch. Somewhere out there, in the white haze, foreign tracks act clanking, and they are getting closer. The vibration changes tonality. If a minute ago it was the tremor of their own diesel generator and motor, now the quagmire under the tracks is shaking violently. This is no longer sound. It is a tectonic shift. Gromov feels the resonance hit through the seat, straight into his spine. His teeth begin to chatter, and it isn't from the cold. This is what inevitability sounds like. Gromov tears the headset off one ear. He needs to hear the pure sound, without the distortion of the membrane. Through the cottony silence of the swamp breaks a low, rumbling rhythm. It is not the strained whine of Soviet engines, and not the high hum of American ones. It is a well-fed, heavy power. 12-cylinder Maybach engines. 700 horsepower grinding through peat and clay. The sound multiplies, layered. There isn't just one machine. A column is coming. In the lieutenant's head, a tactical map instantly forms, one he doesn't have on paper. The pocket has been breached. The Germans aren't sitting in encirclement awaiting captivity. They are breaking out. And they are coming right here, through these cursed, God-forsaken log roads that were considered impassable. The Sherman stands in their way, like a tin can on the rails in front of a freight train. "Commander, that's..." The gunner's voice trembles. "Quiet!" hisses Gromov. The fog in front of them begins to swirl, as if cut by the prow of a giant ship. The white veil tears into tatters. Out of the haze floats the geometry of death. First, the muzzle brake appears. The characteristic two-chamber knob at the end of a long barrel, the black pupil of caliber 88 millimeters. Then the massive angular turret, and finally, the hull. A Tiger. Panzerkampfwagen 6, 57 tons of gloomy Teutonic genius. He is the lead. He is Tsar and God here, the master of the food chain. The tank moves slowly, with frightening confidence. Wide tracks, specifically designed for the Eastern Front, press the logs of the road into the sludge. You can hear the wood cracking under the colossal weight. The motor runs smoothly, without skipping, purring gutturally. On the armor is a spotted camouflage, blurred by mud and soot. On the side, through the caked peat, a tactical number and a cross emerge. The cross looks like a black scar on the gray steel. Gromov looks through the periscope, and his throat goes dry. Range, 500 meters, maybe 600. For a Tiger, that is not distance. It is a point-blank shot. His Zeiss optics allow him to put a shell into a bunker embrasure from 1.5 kilometers. And the high profile of the Sherman for the German gunner right now is like a target in a shooting gallery the size of a barn. Inside the MCHA turret, the air instantly electrified. The smell of fear becomes tangible.
It is the sour, sharp smell of sweat that the adrenal glands dump at the moment of mortal danger. "Tiger! Tiger, right bearing!" screams Erokin. The shell he was holding in his hands, a 7-kilogram slug, falls to the floor of the fighting compartment with a clang. The sound of metal hitting metal in the confined space hits the ears like a gunshot. The loader is pressed against the gun breech, his eyes wide, pupils filling the entire iris. He sees the same thing the commander sees, a monster that wasn't supposed to be here. Panic is a virus. In a tight iron box, it spreads faster than the plague. If he gives it free rein now, the crew will turn into a piece of meat before the shell even hits. "Belay that hysteria!" Gromov kicks Erokin in the shin with his boot. Hard. Painful. It is the only way to return a human from an animal state to a working one. "Pick up the shell. A pea in the tube. Move it!" Erokin whimpers, but the pain sobers him up. Hands shaking with a fine tremor grab the grease-slick casing. Clang of the breech. Shell in the chamber. The breech block rises with a predatory click. "Ready!" exhales the loader, wiping sweat from his forehead with a dirty sleeve. "Driver, stop engine. Kill the motor," Gromov commands over the internal comms. "Comrade Lieutenant, if we kill it, we'll never get it started again. The batteries are dead." Driver Kolyada's voice sounds hollow, like it's coming from a grave. "Kill it, you bastard! They'll hear us!" The Sherman's engine coughs and goes silent. Silence falls, in which only the rumble of the approaching German colossus is heard. Now they are just a piece of cold iron in the fog, a stationary target. Gromov doesn't tear himself away from the periscope. The Tiger turns its turret, slowly, with mechanical grace. The long 8.8 barrel describes an arc scanning the space.
It feels like it is looking straight into his soul.
The black hole of the muzzle brake freezes for a second, looking toward their cover. The commander's heart skips a beat. If the German gunner notices a glint of optics, or the unnatural silhouette of the bushes they are camouflaged with, they have exactly 1.5 seconds left to live, the flight time of the shell. But the turret continues its movement. The barrel turns away. The German doesn't see them. Not yet. The fog and silence saved them for these moments. The Tiger is confident in its invulnerability. He walks like an elephant in a china shop, not expecting resistance. Behind him, in the gaps of the fog, the shadows of other machines can be guessed. Panthers. Self-propelled guns. The entire flower of the Panzerwaffe is spilling out of the pocket, right onto their lonely Sherman. Gromov feels goosebumps running down his back. This isn't just fear. It is the realization of the scale of the catastrophe. One medium tank with a 75mm pop gun against a heavy tank company. By all laws of military science, by all manuals and regulations, they are already dead. A statistical error that will be written off in the irrecoverable losses column. The German tank is in its element. For him, this war is a job. He crushes the earth. He growls with his motor. He radiates threat with every square centimeter of his armor. Gromov can even see the rivets on the sides. He sees the Zimmerit, the ribbed paste against magnetic mines, looking like a waffle crust. This detail makes the enemy frighteningly real. It isn't a picture from an identification manual. It is 40 tons of death, cast in metal at the factories of the Ruhr, and come here, to the Belarusian swamps, to kill him, Viktor Gromov, and his crew. "Commander, what are we gonna do?" The whisper of the gunner in the headphones sounds like a scream. "We can't penetrate them."
"We'll just scratch the paint."
Gromov is silent. He knows the answer. He knows the specs. He knows the thickness of the Tiger's front plate. 100 millimeters of hardened steel. His shell at this distance will simply bounce off,
leaving a dent the Germans will laugh at later. Shooting now is suicide. But there is nowhere to run either. Behind them is the swamp. Turning around on the narrow corduroy road is impossible. They are trapped in a mousetrap into which a huge fat cat has just peeked. The sound of motors grows. The column is getting closer. The clanking of tracks becomes unbearable. It seems the tracks are grinding bones, not earth. The air trembles. Water in the puddles ripples. The tiger passes the beam. Now it is visible in all its glory. Predatory profile, angular power, the absolute weapon created for domination. And against it, a Lend-Lease gift, tall, thin-skinned, stuffed with gasoline, and 3 Russian guys who just this morning hoped to live until victory. Now hope melts away along with the fog. Only the bare physics of combat remains, and a cold calculation in which the chances of survival trend toward absolute zero. Gromov looks into the eyepiece of the sight, and an invisible adding machine clicks in his head. It is the dry, ruthless mathematics of war, where variables are millimeters of steel and meters per second, and the result of the equation is always the same: life or death. Given: distance, 500 meters. Target: frontal projection of a heavy Tiger tank. Weapon: American 75mm gun M3. Solution: 0. Gromov knows the penetration table by heart, better than the Lord's Prayer. At a distance of 500 meters, his standard armor-piercing shell M61 is capable of stitching through about 60, maximum 70 millimeters of homogeneous armor. The Tiger has 100 millimeters of first-class Krupp steel on its forehead. This isn't just armor. It is a monolith. A safe door behind which the German crew feels like they are in a bunker. To shoot now means simply knocking on that door. The armor-piercing slug will hit the vertical plate, ricochet into the sky with a screech, or worse, simply crumble into metal dust, leaving only a smudge of scale on the German armor. It is like throwing stones at a safe. You can't cheat physics. The kinetic energy of the shell fired from the Sherman's short barrel simply isn't enough to disrupt the molecular structure of the German protection. But the laws of physics have a flip side. If Gromov's shell is a mosquito bite to the German, then the return strike of the 8.8, 88 millimeters, will be fatal for the Sherman. The lieutenant shifts his gaze to the interior of the turret. His tank, the M4A2, is an excellent machine for marches, for breakthroughs in the rear, for infantry support. It has a soft suspension, a fancy radio, a gyro stabilizer. But in a duel situation, the Sherman is a mass grave on tracks. It is too tall, almost 3 meters from the ground to the commander's cupola. In this flat fog pressed against the water, the MCHA sticks out like a bell tower. High profile is death. The German gunner doesn't even need to aim much. The silhouette of the American tank fills the sight like a target for rookies. Gromov's own armor is 51 millimeters sloped. In 1942, that was enough. In June 44, against the long-barreled guns of the Wehrmacht, it is foil. The German shell will stitch through the front plate, pass through the fighting compartment, turning the crew into ground meat, punch through the engine firewall, and exit through the rear, wrecking the engine. Gromov feels the floor vibrating under his feet. The Tiger's diesels are working confidently, powerfully. This confidence is infuriating. The German knows he is invulnerable. He walks on foreign land like a master because the engineers at Henschel gave him that right, encasing him in 100 millimeters of steel. The Red Army Armored Forces Manual clearly regulates actions in such a situation. Point 1. Use the folds of the terrain. Point 2. Fire from maximum distance using the advantage of maneuver. Point 3. If penetration of frontal armor is impossible, retreat or call for artillery. Gromov mentally crumples the pages of the manual and throws them into burning oil. There are no folds in the terrain. There is a swamp as flat as a table. Fire from a distance, useless. Maneuver, impossible. A step left or right from the corduroy road means drowning. Retreat, nowhere to go. The manual is written in blood, that is true. But right now, following the manual means guaranteed death with no result. If he shoots from 500 meters, the tracer will show the Germans his position. The Tiger's turret will turn a couple of degrees, a flash will follow, and 1.5 seconds later, the Sherman will turn into a funeral pyre. The gasoline fumes in the tanks will ignite instantly. The crew won't even have time to realize they died. A name floats up in his head: Kovalev. A tank ace whispered about in hospital smoking rooms. Kovalev syndrome. It isn't a diagnosis, it is a tactic of desperation. Breaking all instructions for one single chance. Conscious reduction of distance. Entering the death zone. Kovalev taught, if you can't punch through the enemy from afar, get right up next to him. Become his shadow.
Make him nervous. Turn an artillery duel into a knife fight in a phone booth. There, at point-blank range, tabulated penetration values stop working. There, only rage and the physics of limit loads work. Gromov looks at the back of the gunner's head. The sergeant grips the traverse wheels so hard his fingers are white. His back is tense, like a bowstring. He is waiting for the command, fire. He is ready to stomp the firing pedal and send a useless slug into the forehead of the German monster, just to discharge the tension, to do at least something before death. But Gromov is silent. "Don't shoot," he whispers. "Everyone freeze." The manual demands opening fire. Logic demands running. The instinct of self-preservation is screaming bloody murder. But officer calculation, cold and cynical, says something else. The only chance to penetrate the Tiger with this gun is a distance of 200 meters, or better, 100. In the side, at a right angle. Only that way. That means they need to crawl through the open, right under the nose of the entire German column, another 300 meters. 300 meters on a shaky corduroy road in a tall, conspicuous tank stuffed with gas and shells. It is insanity. It is a court-martial. If they survive, the counterintelligence officer will ask, why did Lieutenant Gromov subject the equipment entrusted to him to unjustified risk? But the alternative to the tribunal is to burn here and now, without even scratching the German hide. Gromov wipes the sweat flooding his eyes with his palm. Salty, acrid sweat. Inside the tank it is stifling, like a steam room, but he is shivering. He evaluates the Sherman not as a machine, but as a tool. What do they have? Gun, weak. Armor, thin. But there is an engine. 2 coupled GM diesels. On this modification, fortunately, there are diesels, although the risk of fire from hydraulics and ammo racks hasn't gone anywhere, but still not gasoline like on the early versions, though the crew out of habit fears burning like candles. The engine is reliable. It doesn't stall at low RPMs. It pulls. There are tracks with rubber metal joints. They are quieter than the clanking tracks of T-34s. The Sherman knows how to sneak. And there is the fog. The fog is their armor. It is their camouflage. The Tiger is blind. Its optics are magnificent at long ranges, but in this milk they are useless. The German commanders are sitting under armor. They are afraid of snipers, afraid of partisans. They look through narrow slits of vision blocks that limit the view to a narrow sector. The Sherman has wider periscopes, better visibility. Gromov makes a decision.
He feels the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders like a concrete slab. He is going to disobey orders. He will not hold the defense on the line. He will attack. One against a company. This isn't heroism. Heroism is pretty words for the Red Star newspaper. Here in the swamp, it is the cold calculation of a suicide bomber who decided to sell his life at the highest possible exchange rate. "Crew, listen to my command," Gromov's voice sounds with an alien metallic timbre. "Do not open fire. Safety off. Loader, prepare 3 armor-piercing. Don't drop them on the floor." He pauses, listening to the rumble of German engines. "We aren't going to shoot from here. We're going to pay them a visit." In the turret, a silence hangs denser than the fog outside. The crew digests what they heard. Close in on a tiger? In this tin can? But in Gromov's eyes there is no madness. There is only the glacial cold of numbers. 100 millimeters minus 75 millimeters of penetration equals death. 200 meters distance plus side profile equals a chance. The equation converges at only one point, and that point is right in front of the muzzle of the German gun. The shell lying in the breech is just a piece of steel weighing 6 kilograms. By itself, it is dead. For it to come alive and kill the enemy, you need to put into it not just a powder charge, but the will of the crew to get to striking distance. Gromov understands. Right now, they stop being soldiers of the regular army. Now they become lone hunters, and their prey is 10 times stronger than them. A technical dead end is overcome only by the human factor, by extreme risk. The clank of the tiger's tracks gets louder. It is already close. Time for thinking is over. Only time for action remains. "Kolyada, start her up." Gromov's voice sounds quiet, almost intimate, but in the tight space of the turret, it drowns out the breathing of 3 men. "Just don't you dare rev it. If you roar, I'll shoot you myself." At idle. Whispering. The commander's order contradicts everything taught in training, and everything the instinct of self-preservation suggests. When you see a tiger, instinct screams, "Hit it!" or "Run!" But Gromov orders to do the third thing, to sneak, to close in. It is unnatural. It is like trying to pet a rabid dog that doesn't see you. Sergeant Major Kolyada, a former tractor driver whose hands are used to the rough levers of collective farm Stalinets tractors, is now working with the jewel-like precision of a surgeon. He understands the task. The Sherman must become a ghost. A finger presses the starter button. The electric motor spins the flywheel. A second of whining that makes the crew go cold inside, and the diesels catch. The sound of the engine seems deafening. Inside the tank, it fills the entire space, vibrates in the eardrums. It feels like this racket can be heard in Berlin. The crew pulls their heads into their shoulders, expecting the instant blow of an .88 caliber. But there is no blow. Outside, beyond the armor, this sound drowns in the bass roar of the German column. A dozen heavy Maybach motors passing half a kilometer away create an ideal sound curtain. The Germans are drowning out their own death. "Forward," commands Gromov. "First gear, smoothly." The tank jerks. The clutches engage softly. The American transmission is a masterpiece of engineering thought that forgives mistakes, but right now there can be no mistakes. The rubber block tracks, velvet paws, as the regiment called them, turn over. They don't clank like the all-metal tracks of the T-34s. The rubber swallows the sound of impact on the ground. The MCHA steps off the logs of the road into liquid mud. They are moving on a parallel course. It is a tactical oxymoron. Instead of widening the distance, increasing chances of survival through enemy misses, they are shortening it. Gromov guides the machine into the dead zone of the fog. The view sector of the German vision blocks is limited. If they stay slightly to the side and constantly close in, there is a chance to remain in the blind spot of peripheral vision. 350 meters, notes Gromov, looking at the rangefinder scale. The tank crawls. Speed, 5 kilometers per hour. This is the speed of a pedestrian walking to the scaffold. The driver steers the machine by touch. He feels the swamp through the levers. He feels where the ground holds and where a bottomless bog hides under the moss. One wrong move, and 30 tons of American steel will list. The high profile of the Sherman will play a cruel joke. Center of gravity is high. Tipping over on such ground is a question of a second. If they get stuck now, they become just a target. A stationary, pathetic target at point-blank range. 300 meters. The ground shakes. Now the vibration from the German tanks is transmitted not only through the air, but through the soil. The Sherman shakes as if in a fever. Shadows flicker in the sight. Gray, angular ghosts float in the gaps of fog off the starboard side. This is the madness of the maneuver. From a tactical point of view, they are committing suicide. But from the point of view of penetration physics, they are entering the working range. Gromov understands. He is exchanging his life for the kinetic energy of the shell. The closer he gets, the more joules of energy he will drive into the German side. Every meter of approach is paid for with the crew's nerve cells. Inside the turret, no one breathes. Only the strained hum of the transmission and the creak of the traverse mechanisms are audible. "Commander, they'll spot us," whispers the radio operator machine gunner sitting below, next to the driver. There is pleading in his voice. He doesn't see the battlefield. He is looking at a solid armor plate in front of him and hears only the roar of the enemy. His fear is the worst kind, the fear of the blind. "Silence," cuts off Gromov. "Kolyeda, bear left, into the hollow." They dive into a strip of thicker fog. Visibility drops to 10 meters. Now they are moving on instruments and intuition. Gromov orients by sound. The roar of tigers on the right is like a beacon. Distance, 250 meters. This is no longer an artillery duel. It is pistol range for tank guns. At this distance, a shell flies for less than half a second. At this distance, there are no ricochets if the angle of impact is close to direct. At this distance, armor is smashed like an eggshell. Gromov feels like a tightrope walker, walking over an abyss without a safety net. Every meter forward is a step into the beast's maw. But there is no way back. You can't turn around. You'll expose the rear. You can't stop, they'll detect you. Only forward, into the very inferno, right up to the Leviathan's side. The driver's hands are wet with sweat. The levers slip. Kolyada wipes his palms on his pants without letting go of the controls, switching hands one by one. His face is a gray mask of tension. He isn't a tractor driver right now. He is a pianist playing a requiem. He has to guide the 30-ton behemoth so that not a single branch cracks, so the engine doesn't sneeze, so the track doesn't slurp too loud. 200 meters, whispers Gromov. This is knife-fighting range. From this distance, you can see the rivets on the enemy armor. You can see the mud on the road wheels. You can see the commander's cupola on the Tiger turning. The German commander is probably looking at a map right now, or drinking ersatz coffee from a thermos, confident in his safety. He doesn't know that 200 meters away from him, in the damp fog, his death is creeping. Death with a white star on the armor and a Russian crew inside. Gromov evaluates the angle. They are coming out on the flank. The German column has stretched out. The Tiger is leading. Behind him, 50 meters back, a Panther. The sides are open.
The fog hides the Sherman, but one shot and the flash will tear the gloom apart, giving away their position completely. After the first shot, they will live exactly as long as it takes the Tiger's turret to turn 90 degrees. 10 seconds? 15? That is the price of their life. 15 seconds to do the job. Halt, exhales Gromov. The Sherman freezes, rocking gently on its suspension. The engine drops to idle, rustling barely audibly. Now they aren't a tank. They are an ambush. To the right, in a gap of whitish murk, floats the huge, flat side of the Tiger. 80 millimeters of vertical armor. At a right angle. It is the perfect target. An artilleryman's dream. But Gromov's hands are shaking. Not from fear, but from adrenaline hitting the blood like boiling water. The decision is made. They got close. They did the impossible, snuck up on a Tiger to pistol range. Now the scariest part begins. Now he has to press the trigger and open the gates to hell. The fog around seems dense as cotton wool. It muffles sounds, but it can't muffle the pounding of the heart, which seems to ring in the armor plates. Gromov looks at the profile of the German tank. He sees the spot he needs to hit. Ammo rack. Right behind the turret, in the sponson. If he hits there, it will blow the Tiger's head off. If he misses half a meter lower, the shell will go into the running gear, knock off a road wheel, but the tank will survive and turn its gun. No right to mistake. A second stretches into eternity. Gromov feels time compress. Space has narrowed to the crosshairs of the sight and the gray side with the black cross. Everything else has ceased to exist. There is no swamp, no war, no Russia. There is only this cross, this fog, and this finger on the electric trigger button. Inside the Sherman's turret, time thickens into a black, sticky lump. Outside, fog and the roar of German engines. Inside, silence, broken only by the wheezing breath of 4 men and the barely audible hum of the gyro. But this silence is deceptive. It is the silence before detonation. Nerves are strung so tight, it seems the air is ringing. The crew sits in an iron box lined with ammo and fuel tanks, 200 meters from certain death. A tanker's psychology is a fragile thing. It rests on the illusion of armor. As long as you believe the steel will protect you, you are combat capable. But when you understand that your armor is just paper to the enemy, the illusion collapses. And then comes animal, primal terror. The loader, Sergeant Erikin, breaks first. He looks into the loader's periscope, sees the gray wall of the German side, sees the cross filling the entire field of view. This cross isn't a symbol. It is a sentence. Erikin understands. They got too close. They are in a zone where survival is statistically impossible. Commander, Erikin's voice in the headset sounds strange. It isn't a soldier's voice. It is the whimper of a trapped animal. Commander, we need to leave. Gromov doesn't turn around. He holds the target. Belay that, he throws out dryly. Vitya, don't you see? Erikin breaks into a scream, forgetting insubordination. It's a Tiger. It'll burn us. We're sitting ducks. We're gonna die here for nothing. In the tight space of the turret, hysteria flares instantly, like gasoline fumes. Panic is contagious. The gunner flinches, his hand jerks on the elevation wheel. The gun barrel dips slightly. The driver below starts to fidget, and the tank responds with a slight tremor, risking giving away their position with the squeak of suspension. Erikin throws the shell into the ready rack, hands shaking. His face glistens with sweat, eyes darting around the turret looking for an exit. He looks at the hatch. The instinct of self-preservation screams in his ear. Run! Open the hatch and run into the swamp. There, in the mud, there is a chance. Here, in this steel trap, there are no chances. Back! Go back! Screams the loader. He grabs Gromov by the shoulder, trying to turn him around. You'll get us all killed! It's a tribunal! It's suicide! Kolyada, reverse! The driver below hesitates. The lever twitches. The Sherman rocks backward. This is the end. Another second, and the crew will turn into an uncontrollable herd. Kolyada will jerk the clutch, the engine will roar, the German will hear, the Tiger's turret will turn, and it will all end in a flash. Democracy in a tank is death. Only one must work here. Gromov does the only thing that can save the situation. He unbuckles his throat mic, takes a step in the cramped turret, and swings a fist into Erokin's jaw.
The blow is dull, heavy.
The loader's head snaps back. His helmet slides to the side. Erokin hits the back of his head on the turret ring and goes quiet, gasping for air. In his eyes, murk and lack of understanding. A ringing silence hangs in the turret. You can only hear blood pounding in temples and the gunner sobbing. Gromov leans over the loader, grabs him by the lapels, pulls him close. Their faces are centimeters apart. Gromov speaks fast, clearly, hammering each word like a nail. Listen to me, you son of a bitch. We are already dead. Do you understand? We died 5 minutes ago when we entered this swamp. We don't exist. Erokin blinks. The pain in his jaw brings him back to reality. If we run now, continues Gromov without loosening his grip, they'll shoot us in the back. The Tiger will turn around and put a slug in our engine. You will burn alive, but you'll die a coward. In disgrace. Gromov shakes the sergeant. But if we stay, if we take the fight,
We'll take them with us.
we'll turn their parade into hell. We'll die, but they'll die too. Do you understand me, soldier? Erokin looks into the commander's eyes. He doesn't see madness there. He sees the truth. The cruel, simple truth of war. There is no hope. There is no salvation. There is only a choice. Die like a running rat, or die like a snapping wolf. In that moment, a metamorphosis happens in the turret. A psychological break. Fear burns out like a fuse during a power surge. When you accept the inevitability of death, fear disappears. Only function remains. Only work remains. The loader nods. He wipes blood from his split lip with the back of his hand. His hands stop shaking. His gaze becomes empty, glassy, but hard. It is the gaze of a dead man who has nothing left to lose. Understood, Commander, he croaks. My fault. Get in line. Gromov releases him. Shell in the breech. Erokin picks up the armor-piercing round from the floor. The heavy slug lies in his hands familiarly, comfortably. Click, clang of the breech. The sound of the closing wedge sounds like a period in a sentence. The crew has become a single organism again. There are no more people with their fears, letters from home, and plans for after the war. There are only functions. Commander, gunner, loader, driver. Biological appendages to mechanisms. Gunner, target. Gromov's voice on the air is calm and cold as metal again. Target in sight. Side. Range 200. Driver, hold the vehicle. Don't breathe. Now there is no fear. There is a cold, angry excitement. They are standing in the shadow of death, and death is looking the other way. This gives them the right of the first strike. A right bought at the price of hysteria
and a smashed face. Gromov feels the floor vibrating. It is no longer just the motor vibration. It is the tremor of fate itself. In a minute, it will be hell here. But it will be their hell. They will light it. The smell of burnt oil and human sweat in the turret mixes with the metallic taste of blood. It is the smell of war. Real, unembellished. War where heroism isn't a pretty pose on a poster, but the ability to suppress the instinct of self-preservation and do your job, knowing you won't come home. Gromov presses against the eyepiece. The cross on the tiger's side has become even closer. Now it doesn't scare. Now it beckons. It is the aim point. Everything extraneous is cut away. Only physics remains. Mass of the shell, muzzle velocity, armor thickness, and hatred. Pure, distilled hatred that drives blood through veins faster than any fuel pump. "Ready for combat," reports Erokin, voice steady, dead. "Wait," whispers Gromov. "Wait until he exposes himself." Seconds fall into eternity, heavy as lead drops. The Sherman isn't driving anymore. It is stalking. 30 tons of American metal slide over the shaky surface of the swamp with the grace of a predator that smells blood. Rubber metal tracks, the best thing Detroit engineers invented for stealth, roll softly over hummocks, crushing moss and stunted bushes. No clanking, no squeaking. Only the heavy, strained breathing of engines working at extremely low RPMs, and the squelch of sludge squeezed out from under the road wheels. Gromov doesn't breathe. It seems even the beating of his heart could drown out the noise of the German column and betray their presence. He is glued to the commander's periscope eyepiece. The glass is fogged at the edges, but the center is clear. And in this center unfolds a picture that makes blood freeze in the veins, turning into ice chips. The fog parts. Not all of it, but in layers, opening windows of visibility. In one of these windows, just 200 meters away, floats the side of the Tiger. From such a distance, the tank no longer looks like a faceless murder machine. It grows terrifying details. Gromov sees everything. He sees the ribbed surface of the Zimmerit, the special anti-magnetic coating looking like waffle crust that Germans cover vertical armor plates with. He sees mud dried on the bolts of the side skirt mounts, sees scratches on the gray paint left by branches somewhere near Minsk, sees soot around the exhaust pipes. The enemy is careless. This is the scariest and weirdest sight. The Germans feel absolutely safe. The Tiger's commander's hatch is open. A head in a black side cap sticks out of it. A Wehrmacht officer. He isn't looking at the swamp. He is looking forward, at the road, or checking a map. A cigarette in his teeth. Smoke rises lazily, mixing with the fog. This German officer is currently separated from death by only a thin partition of time and the will of a Russian lieutenant. 200 meters, whispers the gunner. His voice is dry, rustling like dry leaves. I see the cross. Clearly see the cross. In the gunner's sight, the black beam cross, the Balkenkreuz, occupies the entire field of view. It is painted right in the center of the side, slightly above the track guard. Irony of fate, the Germans marked the spot of their own demise. Right behind this cross, inside the armored belly, are racks of 88mm shells. This is the giant's pain point, Achilles' heel. If you punch the armor here, the ammo detonation will blow the 57-ton behemoth to atoms. But you can't shoot. The angle of impact is about 70 degrees. It is a risk. Ricochet at this distance is unlikely, but possible. The American M61 armor-piercing shell with a ballistic cap is finicky. If it hits at a sharp angle, it might just slide along the Zimmerit, leaving a gouge, and go into the sky. You need a right angle, 90 degrees, a perfect perpendicular meeting. Only then will all the kinetic energy, all the joules accumulated by the powder charge, go into smashing the steel, not into the screech of a ricochet. "Wait," commands Gromov. He feels sweat flooding his eyes, stinging his eyelids, but is afraid to blink. "Let him turn. A little more." The tiger crawls slowly along the corduroy road, skirting a group of pines. To return to the course, the German driver has to turn slightly left, exposing the side perfectly flat. It is the geometry of death. Gromov right now isn't an officer, isn't a human. He is a calculating machine. He calculates vectors of movement of 2 steel boxes in 3-dimensional space. Inside the Sherman, there is ringing silence. The electric turret traverse motor is off, so it doesn't buzz. The gunner turns the wheel by hand. The gear teeth engage with a soft, oily click that sounds like a crash. The barrel of the M3 gun crawls millimeter by millimeter following the target. The gunner's hand lies on the firing grip. His index finger trembles over the electric trigger button. The solenoid. A simple electric coil that, when pressed, will send an impulse and release the striker. Between life and death. A gap of 2 millimeters of button travel. The gunner breathes heavily, wheezing. Air whistles into his lungs and comes back out, saturated with carbon dioxide and fear. "Calm your breathing," whispers Gromov. "Shoot on the exhale, like at the range." In the optical eyepiece, the tiger is huge. It blocks out the whole world. It seems if you reach out, you can touch its cold, wet armor. You can see the drive sprockets rotating, grinding the mud. You can see the antenna quivering. You can see the German officer flicking ash from his cigarette. This gesture, flicking ash, causes a surge of cold rage in Gromov. They came here to kill, but act like tourists on a safari. They think the swamp is just mud. They don't know the swamp is an ambush. The tiger begins the maneuver. Left track slows down, right one speeds up. The tank hull turns. The angle changes, 80 degrees, 85. The side becomes a flat, even wall, the perfect target. "Now," exhales Gromov. Time stops. The second hand on the watch freezes. Sounds disappear. No more roar of engines, no squelching of the swamp. There is only the crosshairs of the sight, superimposed on the black cross. The black pupil of the 75mm gun looks straight into the heart of the German machine. Distance, 180 meters. Impossible to miss. This is the moment of truth. Point of no return. As soon as the solenoid circuit closes, their fate will be decided. Either they burn this tiger and create chaos, or they die in 10 seconds. The gunner's muscles turn to stone. He stops breathing. The whole world shrinks to the size of the aiming mark. The finger begins to press the trigger. Slowly, smoothly, taking up the slack. Gromov sees the gunner's back tense up. He knows this sensation. The sensation of power over metal. The sensation when you let the genie out of the bottle. The shell is already begging to get out. The primer awaits the striker's blow. The powder in the casing is ready to turn into a firestorm. The German commander in the hatch turns his head. It seems he noticed something. Maybe a glint of optics. Maybe an unnatural shadow in the bushes. His face changes. Relaxation disappears. Mouth opens for a scream or command. The cigarette falls down. He saw. But it is already too late. Physiology takes over. Reflexes work faster than thought. The gunner's finger presses the last millimeters. Contact closes. Silence explodes. "Fire!" Gromov's scream drowns in the roar. The M3 gun barks short and mean. It isn't the long, rolling boom of a howitzer. It is a dry, cracking whip strike that plugs the ears even in a headset. The gun breech flies back deep into the turret on recoil. The massive steel block stops centimeters from the guard, ejecting the smoking casing with a clang. The brass cylinder falls to the floor with a heavy, hollow ring. A blue cloud of powder smoke bursts from the open breech. Bitter, acrid, it instantly fills the lungs, displacing oxygen. The M61 shell with armor-piercing cap covers 180 meters in 0.3 seconds. The eye cannot track the trajectory. Impact. Through the optics, Gromov sees a fiery flower bloom on the tiger's side, right in the center of the black cross. Sparks fly in a fan. The armor didn't hold. At this distance, at a right angle, physics is merciless. The slug smashed through 80 millimeters of cemented steel like paper and burst inside the fighting compartment. Red-hot shrapnel of armor and remnants of the shell itself hit the ammo rack. Detonation. This isn't an explosion. It is a volcanic eruption. 57 tons of German pride jump in place.
The Tiger's multi-ton turret tears off the ring, tossed by monstrous pressure from within, does a somersault in the air, and crashes into the swamp next to the hull with a roar. A column of roaring flame the height of a 3-story building beats from the tank's belly. The Tiger commander, the one with the cigarette, has vanished, evaporated, his molecules mixed with burning cordite. "Target destroyed!" screams Gromov, drowning out the noise of the fire. "Erokin! Shell!" The loader is no longer a human. He is a function. The guy who a minute ago was whimpering from fear has vanished. An autoloader of flesh and blood remains. His hands work faster than thought. Grabs a new round from the rack. Heavy, slippery with grease. Torso twist. Palm strike to the base of the casing, driving it into the breech. Clang of the wedge. This sound is the most pleasant sound in war. The sound of readiness to kill further. "Ready!" wheezes Erokin. "Target 2! Panther! Left 10!" commands Gromov. The German column is in shock. The lead vehicle destroyed in a split second. They are blinded by the explosion flash. Chaos begins in the fog. Rear vehicles run into front ones. Someone tries to drive off the corduroy road and immediately bogs down, belly landing on the soil. They don't see where death came from. The echo of the shot bounces in the fog, deceiving the hearing. They think they are being hit from all sides. The gunner spins the turret. Hydraulics whine at the limit. The Westinghouse electric drive, pride of American engineers, holds the horizon. The Sherman shudders from close explosions. The Germans have started firing blindly, at sound, but the gun barrel stands rock solid. The gyroscopic stabilizer compensates for the sway. This is the advantage the Germans don't have. To shoot accurately, the Panther needs to stop and dampen oscillations. The Sherman doesn't need to stop. In the sight, the Panther's side. Sloped armor? Not here. Its side is straight and thin, only 45 millimeters. For a 75 millimeter gun, it is cardboard. Fire! Another strike, another recoil, another ring of brass on the floor. The turret floor is already littered with brass, slippery underfoot, nothing to breathe. The fan howls, straining, trying to pull out the powder fumes, but in vain. Eyes water, throat tickles. The crew is working in a gas chamber. The shell hits the Panther in the engine compartment. No flash, but thick black smoke pours from the rear. Fuel lines severed. Burning gasoline floods the transmission. The crew starts bailing out of hatches. Burning black figures fall into the swamp sludge. "Hey, at the infantry!" screams Gromov. "No, belay! AP! Third tank is traversing!"
The third machine in the column is a Stug self-propelled gun. Low, squat, turretless. It is dangerous. It doesn't need to rotate a turret. It turns with its whole hull. And it already sees the flashes of the Sherman's shots. Its front is 80 millimeters. Its gun looks right at them.
Faster, Erokin! Faster, goddammit!
Gromov pounds the gun guard with his fist. A second stretches into eternity. Gromov sees the barrel of the German SPG leveling at them. He looks into that black eye and realizes they are late. Fractions of a second decide everything. The loader tears his fingernails, ripping the shell out of the tight floor rack. Blood mixes with oil on the casing. Jerk. Slam. Breech clangs.
Up! Shot!
Two shots sound almost simultaneously. The Sherman jerks back from recoil. At the same instant, a whistling vortex rushes over the turret. The Stug's shell passes centimeters from the commander's periscope. The air wave hits the ears like a sledgehammer. The antenna is sheared off clean. But the German missed. Shot from the hip, in panic. But the Sherman gunner didn't. The American slug hits the joint of the casemate and hull of the SPG. The weld seam bursts. The shell jams inside, but the kinetic impact is of such force that the Stug's driver dies of concussion on the spot. The machine jerks and freezes. Smoke pours from the hatch. 3 tanks, 1 minute. Inside the Sherman, hell. Temperature near 40 degrees. Sweat pours in streams, soaking overalls through. Erokin, naked to the waist, slides his boots on casings. His chest heaves like blacksmith bellows. Hands bloody, but he is already reaching for the next shell. This is the madness of a death conveyor. "Kolyada, back up! Changing position!" wheezes Gromov. His voice is gone. In his ears a ringing, as if a church bell settled there. This is the advantage of rate of fire. The Sherman has a spacious turret. The loader has room to move. In German boxes, it is tight. Shells are heavy, long. While the German loader wrestles his 8.8, Erokin manages to slam in 2, maybe 3 .75 caliber rounds. Quantity turns into quality. They are burying the enemy in steel. Outside is a picture of the apocalypse. The fog is backlit by the crimson glow of fires. The Tiger burns, scattering burning pieces of rubber and metal around. The Panther burns, belching black, greasy, cracking smoke. The Stug smokes. The column has stopped. Rear vehicles back up, breaking formation. They don't understand who they are fighting. They think they ran into an anti-tank gun battery. It doesn't occur to them that they are being smashed by a single medium tank whose crew decided to die, but not surrender. "Shells!" yells Erokin. "Ready rack is empty!" Gromov looks down. The floor is littered with empty casings. Nowhere to put them. No time to open the pistol port in the turret side to throw them out. They roll underfoot, clink, get in the way. "Take from the floor! Open the wet stowage!" commands the lieutenant. This takes time. Precious seconds. Rate of fire drops. And at this moment, the Germans come to their senses. Shock passes. Wehrmacht professionalism starts to work. They spotted the flashes. They understood where the enemy is. Gromov sees in the periscope as the fourth machine in the column, another Tiger, begins to slowly, inevitably turn its turret in their direction. Now the fog won't save them. Now distance won't save them. Now the slaughter begins. The return strike. "Hold on, brothers!" screams Gromov, understanding that armor won't save them. "It's gonna get hot!" Inside the tank smells of burnt wiring. Something is shorting. From overheating and vibration, The tech starts to fail, but the people are still holding. People turned out to be tougher than iron. Gromov feels a strange calm. They did the main thing. They broke the back of the attack. The vanguard is destroyed. The breakthrough is stopped. Now only one thing remains: to sell their lives. And the price is already set. A high price.
Gunner, hit the tracks!
Immobilize the bastard!
The barrel jerks again, spitting death. War in the fog continues, but now it is a fight to the death. No rules, no tactics, only reflexes and luck. The return blow doesn't make them wait. The Germans are professionals. Shock from losing the lead vehicles passes in seconds, giving way to cold reaction honed over years. They don't see the target. The fog reliably covers the Sherman's silhouette, but they see the flashes. In this whitish milk, every shot of Gromov's gun is a beacon screaming, "I am here." The air is torn apart. It is no longer single pops, it is a squall. Dozens of barrels, tank, SPG, machine gun, turn toward the small island of solid ground where the American import is thrashing about. The swamp around instantly turns into a boiling cauldron. Water flies up in pillars of mud mixed with peat. Shrapnel from high-explosive shells mows down the bushes like a scythe.
The screech of ricochets is heard, the vile, whining sound of deformed metal going into the sky.
Hard left! Gas!
Screams Gromov, but doesn't hear himself. Nearby, 5 meters away, a 105mm HE shell from howitzer support falls into the sludge. The blast wave hits the side of the Sherman like a sledgehammer. The 30-ton tank is tossed aside like a toy. Tracks slip, tearing up the sod. Inside the turret, men are thrown against the walls. Gromov slams his shoulder against the periscope bracket, feeling the joint crunch. Pain blinds, but it also sobers. Then comes the hit. This isn't a close burst. It is a hit. A shell fired at random, blindly, finds the target. It hits the turret at a glancing angle. The screech is like hell itself being dragged across the armor. Monstrous kinetic energy shears off the external toolbox, tears off the Pioneer tool mounts, turning shovels and crowbars into deadly shrapnel. Inside the turret, the lights go out.
Emergency lighting flickers and dies. Darkness.
And ringing. Ringing of such force it seems the head will burst like an overripe watermelon. Gromov opens his mouth to equalize pressure, but his ears are already stuffed with cotton. Something warm and sticky flows from his nose. Blood. He runs a hand over his face. Palm is red. Concussion. The vestibular system fails. The floor goes out from under his feet. Gromov is nauseous. Stomach spasms trying to expel contents. It is a normal reaction of the body to extreme pressure. The brain tries to reboot. "Vitya! Vitya!" Erokin's voice breaks through the cotton. The loader shakes him by the shoulder. The sergeant's face is twisted, mouth open in a scream, but words are barely audible. Gromov shakes his head, spraying drops of blood. Vision returns in jerks. He sees the gunner. He is hanging on the sight, forehead buried in the brow pad. Alive? Dead? The tank continues to move. Kolyada, down there in his driver's compartment, is working miracles. He feels the battle with his spinal cord. He throws the machine forward, then backward, carving insane zigzags. The Sherman roars, spins its wheels, but doesn't stop. Stopping is death. The Germans are bracketing them. Shells are landing closer and closer. "Fire!" wheezes Gromov. Voice sounds like it's from a barrel, alien and distant.
Shoot, damn you!
The gunner lifts his head. A trickle of blood flows from his ear, soaking the collar of his overalls. But the hands remember. Hands do. He presses against the eyepiece again. The stench in the turret is unbearable. Ventilation can't cope. Powder gases accumulate at the bottom, spreading along the floor like blue fog. Eyes sting like sand was poured in them. You can only breathe every other time, gasping for air with your mouth like a fish on ice. Gromov looks into the vision block. It is cracked. A crack cuts the world in half, but through the web of glass he sees shadows. The Germans are in panic. Loss of command. The column is mixed up. Rear ones push on the front ones. Someone backs up, exposing sides. The Panther that was second is burning, but its turret is still rotating. The traverse mechanism works even in agony. It is looking for the offender. To the right, out of the fog, crawls the blunt snout of a Hanomag APC. Infantry. Grenadiers spill out of the back into the water, trying to go prone.
Here!
Commands Gromov, forgetting that no one hears him. He kicks Erokin with his foot and points to the rack with high explosives. The loader understands without words. Gesture. Action. A high explosive shell flies into the barrel. Shot. The burst covers the infantry. A fountain of dirty water, shreds of bodies, and debris of metal. The Hull machine gunner below woke up. The bow Browning starts choking on long bursts. Tracers stitch the fog, going into the white gloom. But the main threat isn't infantry. The main threat is those who survived in steel boxes. Another blow to the hull. This time, running gear. The tank jerks, track clanks. Road wheel shot off. Track torn. If the track comes off, they are corpses. But the Sherman continues to crawl. It pulls, the darling. American rubber burns, stinks unbearably, but the steel fingers of the tracks still cling to the soil.
Finish him!
Gromov sees the silhouette of another Panther trying to flank them. She exposes her side, trying to get out of the fire zone. The gunner catches the moment. He is sick. He vomits right on the floor, on the spent casings. Bile mixed with mucus. But he doesn't let go of the wheels. This is no longer a battle. It is the agony of two systems. Humans are working on reflexes, beyond physical limits. Shot. The shell hits the Panther under the turret. Sparks. Turret jams. Tank stops, but doesn't burn.
Again!
Screams Gromov. Erokin slips on his own vomit, falls, drops the shell. The heavy slug hits him in the leg. He curses, howls in pain, but picks up the shell. In his eyes, the madness of a cornered rat. He drives the round into the barrel with a fist strike, tearing skin to meat.
Ready!
Second shell finishes the German. Fuel flash. Now it burns brightly, cheerfully. Inside the Sherman, temperature rises to 50 degrees. Metal glows. Engine overheated, gauge needles long in the red zone. But they are alive. Alive for now. Gromov feels consciousness starting to float away. Concussion hits with a second wave. Darkness thickens before his eyes. He shakes his head, slaps his cheeks. Can't pass out. If the commander passes out, the crew becomes just meat in a tin can. He looks at his men. Dirty, bloody, deafened, choking in smoke. They look more like devils in hell than soldiers of the Red Army. But they are doing their job. They are grinding up the Wehrmacht. Outside, the fog tears to shreds from the heat of burning machines. The graveyard of equipment grows. 200 meters of corduroy road turned into a branch of hell on earth. But they created this hell. 4 guys in one machine. Strike again. Armor rings. Ricochet. Alive! grins Erokin, spitting blood. Can't take us, bitches! Gromov doesn't share his optimism. He knows. Luck can't last forever. The Sherman's armor is already at the limit. Weld seams are cracking. Micro cracks crawl along the hull. One more lucky hit, and the armor will split. And there are still many Germans. The roar of engines doesn't subside. New predators are pulling up from the depth of the column. They come to the light of fires, come to the smell of blood. The duel grows into a slaughter. And in this slaughter, they are running out of trumps. Only anger remains. Anger and inertia that forces them to load, aim, and shoot while the heart still beats. Statistics is a science that knows no pity.
In the equation of battle, the variable of luck has its limit, and this limit is exhausted. The Sherman has been dancing on the edge of the grave for 8 minutes now. That is 8 minutes of borrowed time, stolen from death. But creditors in gray uniforms always come for debts. The blow comes not from where they expected. It isn't an aimed shot from a tiger, not dagger fire from a panther. It is a stray, high-explosive shell fired at random by some field gun hidden in the tree line. Blind chance. The shell falls on the rear of the tank, on the engine compartment. The armor of the engine deck is thin. The HE shell punches through the air intake louvers and detonates inside, right on the cylinder blocks. The explosion is dull, guttural. The tank is tossed rear up like a kicking horse. Gromov hits his face on the breech, losing orientation. Lights go out completely. But the worst comes a second later. The engines die. The rhythmic, strained hum of GM diesels, which was the pulse of this steel box, cuts off. Silence falls. Dead, cottony silence, in which only the crackling of tearing metal and the hiss of ruptured pneumatics are heard. And then comes the fire. 2 twin 6-cylinder diesels turn into an infernal furnace, fuel lines severed, oil, diesel, hydraulic fluid, it all ignites instantly. The fire suppression system triggers, the pop of CO2 cylinders is heard, but it is powerless. The breach is too big. Fire roars, devouring oxygen.
Kolyada, start it!
Screams Gromov, tearing his voice.
Let's go!
No answer. Down below in the driver's compartment, flames rage. Shrapnel punched through the firewall. Sergeant Major Kolyada, virtuoso of levers, the man who made a 30-ton tank dance on a swamp, didn't even have time to cry out. A firestorm hit him in the back. Gromov sees through the gaps in the turret floor a fiery silhouette thrashing below.
The driver tries to reach the levers, tries to execute the last order, give life to the machine. But his hands no longer obey. Fire melts skin, melts the flight suit, welds flesh to the metal of the seat. The tank jerks in a death convulsion that shorts the starter wiring and freezes forever. Now they aren't a tank. Now they are a pillbox, a long-term firing point, a stationary target in the middle of a burning swamp. The Sherman is dying. Gromov feels it physically. The vibration of life is gone, replaced by the tremor of fire. The hull starts to heat up. Behind, past the armored partition, the temperature is already near 1,000 degrees. Soon, the ammo rack on the floor will start to smolder. They have maybe a minute before detonation scatters them to molecules.
Get out!
Wheezes Erokin, trying to open the loader's hatch.
Sit!
Barks Gromov. He grabs the sergeant by the leg and yanks him down.
Machine gun fire on the deck!
They'll cut us down like kittens.
The lieutenant is right. Outside, bullets and shrapnel drum on the armor. To stick out now is certain death. Inside, death deferred. By a minute. Gromov looks into the sight. He has to do one more thing. To the right, from behind the burning skeleton of the tiger, crawls a squat shadow. Jagdpanzer self-propelled gun. Low, predatory, with sloped frontal armor that their caliber can't take. She is flanking. She sees the Sherman is stopped. She is coming to finish it. The German gunner isn't hurrying. He knows the prey isn't going anywhere. He is aiming at the turret ring. "Turret right," commands Gromov. The gunner turns the wheel. The electric drive is dead, working by hand, heavy. The mechanism goes tight, like the gears were poured with glue.
Jammed!
Howls the gunner.
Won't go, Commander!
Gromov rushes to him. Together they lean on the handle. Muscles crack from tension. Veins on the neck swell like ropes. Centimeter by centimeter, the barrel crawls to the right. Inside the turret, there is nothing to breathe. Smoke from the fire seeps through cracks. Throat feels scraped by a rasp. Eyes see nothing from tears. But they turn. They rotate this cursed turret because it is the only thing they can oppose to inevitability. The SPG stops. Distance 150 meters. She aims the gun. Gromov sees that black eye. It looks right at them. "Faster," whispers the lieutenant. The Sherman's barrel looks slightly left, missing a degree. 1 degree. Erokin, forgetting fear, forgetting the fire under his feet, kicks the breech with his leg, helping the gunner. Locked on. The crosshairs lay on the SPG's track. Can't penetrate the front. But if you knock off a track, she turns by inertia. Exposes the side. "AP! Last one!" Erokin fumbles on the floor. Empty. Everything shot. In the wet rack at the bottom, there is one shell. But to get it, you have to climb into water mixed with oil and blood. Erokin dives down. He disappears in the smoke for a second that seems like an eternity. Returns with a blackened face, clutching a dirty slug to his chest. "Got it!" Loading. Clang of the breech sounds like a funeral bell. The German fired first. Impact. The Jagdpanzer's shell ricochets off the Sherman's gun mantlet. Sparks blind. The turret shakes so hard Gromov's teeth crunch. Shards of optics dig into his face. Blood fills his eye. But they are alive. The German rushed it. Hand wavered. "Fire!" screams Gromov, spitting out bloody mush. The gunner presses the trigger. The Sherman snaps back for the last time. The shell leaves. Hit. The SPG's drive sprocket shatters into smithereens. The track snaps like an over-tightened string. The heavy ribbon of links snakes off the rollers. The SPG, moving at speed, is thrown sharply to the side. She turns sideways. She bogs down in the swamp, lists and freezes, helplessly spinning one track. She is no longer a threat. She is the same kind of target as they are. "That's it," exhales Gromov. "Stop machine." Fire breaks into the fighting compartment. Tongues of flame lick the breach. Paint on the walls starts bubbling. The heat becomes unbearable. Skin starts to dry and crack. They accomplished the mission. The breakthrough is stopped. Enemy equipment is burning. But the price is paid. Kolyada is dead. The tank is dead. Remains to save the people. "Abandon vehicle," commands Gromov. "Hatches open. Wounded up top." Erokin smashes the turret hatch open with a blow of his head. Fresh air, cold, damp, smelling of swamp, bursts into the red-hot oven. It tastes sweet as nectar. They tumble out onto the armor. coughing, choking, falling onto the hot metal. The gunner drags Gromov, who is half blind from blood. Around is a hellish landscape.
The fog has scattered, burned off by the heat of battle. Before them lies a graveyard of German hopes. Twisted metal, smoking skeletons, black mud mixed with iron and flesh. Gromov slides down the front armor into the water. The swamp accepts him, cooling his burned body. He looks at his tank. The Sherman is burning. Flames beat from the engine compartment in a high, steady column. The American star on the side is soot-covered, but visible clearly. The turret, turned to the right, is frozen like a monument to stubbornness. The gun looks at the defeated enemy. Even dead, this tank continues to threaten.
"Kolya," whispers Erokin, looking at the smoking driver's hatch. He is weeping. Tears trace white paths on his soot-black face. There, inside, remained their comrade. The man who didn't let go of the levers until the very end. The man who burned so they could make that last shot. This isn't a poster victory. There are no banners or orchestras here.
There is only the smell of burnt meat, ringing in the ears, and shaking hands.
Gromov tries to stand, but his legs don't hold. He sits waist-deep in icy sludge, leaning his back against the track of the dying machine. He looks at his handiwork. 3 heavy tanks, 2 Panthers, a self-propelled gun, and dozens of infantrymen left forever in this quagmire. All this was done by one machine, one crew, in 10 minutes of combat. The ammo explosion in the Sherman puts a period. The turret jumps. A sheaf of fire bursts from the hatches. Metal groans. The tank settles, sinking deeper into the swamp. He is leaving. He is taking his driver with him. Gromov closes his eyes. Darkness. Silence. Only somewhere far away, beyond the forest, a new rumble grows. Ours. T-34s are coming. Made it in time. But for Gromov's crew, the war is over for today. For them, eternity has begun. The fog leaves.
It doesn't dissipate smoothly, like in a movie, but tears in tatters like dirty gauze, revealing the terrible anatomy of what happened on these 200 meters of Belarusian swamp.
The sun hanging at the zenith breaks through the soot. Its light seems unnaturally bright, cutting inflamed eyes. Together with the fog, time leaves. Those 10 minutes into which a whole life was compressed have ended. The clock starts ticking in a normal rhythm again. But for the survivors, this rhythm feels alien. The silence covering the corduroy road is heavier than lead. It isn't the peaceful silence of a forest. It is the dead silence of a cemetery where a rockfall just thundered. Only hissing is heard. Red-hot metal hisses, cooling in the swamp sludge. Evaporating water hisses. Wood cracks, burning out in the bonfires that the German tanks have become. Lieutenant Viktor Gromov sits on a fallen birch trunk, 10 meters from his machine. He doesn't remember how he got out. Doesn't remember the gunner dragging him through the mud. He just watches. His gaze is empty. It is that same 1,000-yard stare field psychiatrists write about. Gromov sees the picture, but his brain refuses to process it. Too much destruction per unit of area. Before him is a panorama of metallic apocalypse. The heavy Tiger tank, the very first one, lies nose down in the bog. Its turret, torn off by ammo detonation, lies nearby, looking like an overturned turtle. Through a huge ragged hole in the hull, you can see soot-covered innards, transmission, gun breech, twisted racks. 57 tons of invulnerability turned into a pile of scrap metal in a split second. A little further smokes the panther. She burned white. The paint disappeared, leaving only grey scale. Road wheels melted into a single mass. The gun barrel is lowered down, as if in a sign of submission. The Jagdpanzer SPG, having lost a track, listed and is slowly sinking under its own weight.
The swamp is taking her.
And in the middle of this chaos is his Sherman. The MCHA looks pathetic and majestic at the same time. The tall, awkward hull is now black with soot. The American star on the side is barely visible. A thin stream of blue smoke still comes from the driver's hatch. There, inside, their comrade is cooling. Sergeant Major Collada remained at his post forever. He became part of the machine he drove. His grave is 30 tons of steel sent from Detroit to find its end in the Belarusian bogs. Sergeant Erokin squats by the water's edge. He tries to wash a mixture of blood, oil, and gunpowder soot off his hands, but the dirt is ingrained into the skin for good. His hands are shaking with a large, uncontrollable tremor. He looks at his palms with surprise, as if they belong to someone else. The gunner lies on his back, arms spread, looking at the sky. Blood is still oozing from his ears. Eardrums burst. He hears nothing, but it seems he doesn't care.
He just breathes. Deeply, greedily swallowing air in which the stench of burnt meat and diesel mixes with the smell of heated pine needles. From the forest side, a growing rumble is heard. It's friendlies. T-34s fly out onto the log road. One, a second, a third. Infantry riding on the armor. Infantry in faded tunics with PPSH submachine guns around their necks. They are ready for battle. They expect the enemy. But there is no enemy. The column stops. Tankers climb out of hatches. Infantrymen jump to the ground. They approach slowly, cautiously, looking around. They don't believe their eyes. The T-34 battalion commander, a captain with a bandaged head, walks up to Gromov. He looks at the German equipment, then at the lonely, burnt Sherman, then again at the Germans. His eyes widen. He, an experienced officer who went through Kursk and the Dnieper, cannot put this puzzle together.
Who did them like that?
Asks the captain, nodding at the graveyard of cats.
Artillery? Air Force?
Gromov raises a cloudy gaze to him. He tries to say something, but his lips are caked shut. He simply points a hand at his tank.
We did,
he croaks. The word tears out with difficulty, like a piece of glass. The captain looks at the Sherman, then at Gromov. In his look is disbelief half mixed with horror.
One crew,
he asks again.
against a heavy company? No fucking way.
Infantry wanders between the knocked-out German machines. Soldiers touch the cooling armor, look into the holes. Someone whistles. Someone takes off his cap. They understand what happened here. They see the distance. 200 meters. This isn't tank combat distance. This is the distance where you can see the enemy's eyes. Ballistics don't work here. Only madness works here. Gromov stands up with difficulty. Legs are like cotton, knees buckle. He walks to his tank. Puts a hand on the warm, rough side. Sherman M4A2, Lend-Lease. Mass grave for 4, as they joked in the rear. Tall, tippy, with a gun that wasn't supposed to penetrate tigers. But it penetrated. Because it isn't the gun that penetrates. It is the man. The engineering analysis of this battle will later go into reports at the Kubinka Proving Ground. Experts will draw diagrams, calculate angles of impact, marvel at the incredible coincidence of circumstances. They will write that the probability of a Sherman victory in such conditions was less than 1%. They will call it a statistical anomaly, a miracle. But Gromov knows.
There are no miracles. There was physics. There was mud. There was fear that turned into cold calculation. And there was a choice. A choice between passive waiting for death according to the manual and an active step to meet it. He remembers Kolyada's face before the battle. A simple Ryazan face. The driver knew what he was getting into.
He knew that a gasoline, or even diesel, like on the A2, tank would flare up if the side was punched. But he drove the machine forward, into the very inferno, under the barrels of 88 caliber guns. He held it steady so the gunner could make that damn shot. The price of victory, 1 life, and 3 crippled souls that will never be the same. Gromov looks at his hands. They are black with soot, covered in scrapes and burns. These hands just destroyed equipment worth millions of Reichsmarks and killed several dozen people. But he feels no triumph, only emptiness. A huge, ringing emptiness inside that there is nothing to fill with. This is the price of war. Victory doesn't look like a celebration. It looks like a burnt site where deafened, concussed people sit, too tired even to rejoice that they are alive. A medic approaches and starts bandaging the gunner's head. He winces from pain, and that is good. Pain is a sign of life. Erokin finally lights a smoke. The smoke of Makorka mixes with the smoke of the fire. He drags deep until he coughs, and for the first time in an hour, something meaningful appears in his eyes. Gromov turns away from the people and looks at the road disappearing into the fog, where the Germans didn't pass. Mission accomplished. The breach is closed. The battalion can move on. He understands one simple, hard truth that won't be written in award citations. Technical specs are important. Millimeters of armor, muzzle velocity, horsepower per ton. That is the base. But in the final equation of war, there is a variable that engineers cannot calculate. It is the will of the crew to break the rules. The manual forbids closing with a superior enemy. The manual prescribes conserving equipment. The manual is written with the blood of thousands of tankers who burned in 41 and 42. It is a wise book. But sometimes, to survive and win, the manual needs to be forgotten. You need to turn from a soldier into a predator. You need to get in point blank. You need to strike first when they don't expect you. Against the backdrop of the burning tiger, the tall silhouette of the Sherman seems like a monument to human stubbornness. Iron lost to iron, but spirit won over calculation. Gromov spits thick, salty saliva into the mud. He is alive. The war continues. Tomorrow there will be a new battle, new fog, and new fear. But this battle they won. The lieutenant adjusts his skewed belt and takes a step toward the approaching battalion commander. The report will be short, only numbers and facts. Emotions will stay here, in this swamp, together with the cooling metal. The manual is written in blood, that is true. Every line is paid for with someone's life. But victory, real, impossible victory torn from death's teeth, it is written by character, and only by character.